Welcome to Connecting the Dots in Early Childhood Education. I'm Pat, and this is number 6 in a series of roundtable conversations on race and equity in early childhood education. So let's get started. Well, welcome back to Connecting the Dots and another roundtable conversation. This is number 6. We are so excited to have you rejoin us to continue our conversation from number 5 around picking a book and using literature to support building parent engagement around the topic of race and equity. So Shannon, I know in the last one, you were giving us some ideas and some thinking around strategically picking books and thinking about a traveling book. So that had been something, I know, Allison, that we think was your idea, but we're not sure. But we love the idea of a traveling book connecting from the classroom discussions into families and home discussion. So we wanted to start by just inviting you to continue that conversation and reminding you that if you haven't watched the previous roundtable conversations, it might be a good idea because it's a bit of a scope and sequence framework that we're building out for you. So number 1, the first topic that came up when we were thinking about this traveling book was how important it is for you as the teacher in making this invitation to really know about your classroom demographic. And some of the topics that came up for us were culture, the different cultures represented, the different family structures, the different racial backgrounds. And what am I leaving out, ladies? Please jump in. Languages.
Yes.
Anything else that we were thinking about that you really need to know about your children and your families?
I think we probably were going to get to this in a little bit, but knowing that, well, you said family structure. So really knowing that all kinds of families are represented in our classrooms and our buildings. And so just making sure that we make no assumptions about what families look like and gathering the information about what kind of families you have in your classroom without judgment.
I love that, Shannon. And when we were talking about the different family structures and how to be sensitive to the language used, we were saying that, when we're thinking about families, it should be included that it may be guardians, it may be family members who are raising some of your students in your classroom. It may be nannies who are spending most of the time. So it may be a number of different things came up for us about family structure and just how their family structures are changing. It may be one adult who's raising
two moms or 2 dads, and
thank you.
Never making any assumption about mommy and daddy. So making sure that you're diversifying your language constantly.
Absolutely. So all of that is where you start. And if you didn't gather the information on your whole child, on all of the family background, make sure you send out a survey as you're getting ready to do this work. So that's going to inform you on some of that information that you'll need when making your book choice.
And Pat, I'd like to mention, when you have all this information and you know exactly who your families are and what's represented by it, you also may want to think in terms of balance and who's not represented by it to make sure that the children will still get a very comprehensive exposure to all different kinds, okay? And that will help in terms of acceptance for all different types of cultures, races, and stuff, so.
Oh my gosh, thank you for, yes, I'm so happy that you remembered to make that point. Thank you, Allison. And the next thing that we were moving into after thinking about all of those things was really thinking about the language and thinking about whether or not you're going to be choosing a picture book or whether or not you're going to be choosing a book that has limited amount of print and how to make those decisions and choices. And that kind of also brought us back to the anchor, which is, what is a book that you've introduced that deals with race and equity on some level that the children loved. So do you ladies want to talk a little bit more about that? Like thinking about the next steps. If you found that book that they really love, what happens next?
So I think that's always an exciting time in a classroom, finding that book, and of course making sure, as we've been pointing out, all the different things you're looking for in terms of representation, stereotyping, and to make sure it's a book that would be a positive addition to helping in the education of this young adult. And when you see the excitement and you find something that you can connect with, or that you think your children will connect to, you find something that may represent or prompt a feeling, an emotion, or even a conversation around something they may be questioning, or they may be toying with, or may expand their horizon from one level to the next.
Shannon, what did you want to add to that?
I was just thinking about sort of the nuanced way to think about enjoyment, or thinking about what children love. Just knowing that, like, when children like cannot stop talking about something, whether at recess or at the gym or on the way, when you want them to be quiet in the hallway sometimes, but on the way to, being picked up from their parents or their guardians or their caregivers.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's what you're listening for. That kind of, you're listening for their conversations that are happening naturally during, whether you eat lunch with them or not, just during these times where they're waiting for the bathroom or waiting to wash their hands, really listening to their natural conversation that is prompted by something in a book that you read. That would be amazing to send home, because then that they're going to have this, rich conversation opportunities with the people that they live with.
Yeah. And in preparing for sending that book home, you've made a choice, you've gone through it, just really understanding as teachers how much preparation, and I don't want to make it sound like you give you a lot of work, but in terms of just reading the text, understanding what it is you're trying to share with families, what it is you want to connect with, so that you have that sort of like a ribbon running through all the families and children and back to you and around, that you want to come through in the reading. Okay, how are you going to sort of have them share the experiences that came out during the course of your day in the classroom, during your conversations with the children, during the reading of it? Those sorts of things are just got to keep in mind as you are preparing.
Right.
Previewing the text, and thinking of what you may highlight or what connections you yourself are making.
Right.
Either that will make you want to present it to the children, and also the connections that your children in turn shared back with you.
And I know, Shannon, you were talking some specifics. Thank you, Allison. That's very important, all of that thinking. And then the specifics about the strategy of creating the framework so that this traveling book actually gets out and into the hands. What is the messaging that you send out beforehand? And then what are the questions that you are sending out? And are you sending out a little notebook, a journal that goes with the book? How many copies are you sending out? So that comes down to some of the real planning and organization of using a traveling book. I know I'm probably forgetting something about that, but before I forget this point, I want to say that as this is happening and as parents are engaging and sending back their responses to the questions that they're asking their children and the conversations that they're having with their children, after all of that is said and done, you want to do a survey to find out from your parents what was the impact, so that you can learn from that initial first experience of the traveling book what worked and what didn't work, and what their feelings were about the experience, what they learned from doing this with their children, so that you can really not make this a one and done, but make this a part of your curriculum design.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting in that too, Pat, because it opens up, it can, like a book, it can open up so many possibilities, you
Yeah.
know, and, you know, sometimes people may shudder when they hear survey and stuff, but in so many ways, in different topics, when we're dealing with it, there's always some sort of culminating activity or
I love it.
experience that you want. So it's a matter of, after reading the book, you can ask a question, were you motivated to add something, change something? I remember one time I read a book, my son, they sent it to him as some project. Nothing ever happens on 90th Street or something like that, or 91st Street. And we spent one day walking across 90th Street from York all the way over. And we keep remembering it, and we often do similar things like that. So from that reading in the school, where they read it and he was eager to bring it home and stuff like that, so much more came out of it. You know, it was a matter of, as a family, that is something we always remember. That's something we even challenge ourselves to do again. So, you know, that's a great connection. That's a great activity that can be encapsulated from a survey. It can be encapsulated and shared from a picture, from a project, from all these different ways of sharing it and expressing it.
I love the culminating idea, or the sharing of pictures, or the sharing of what came up in their home and what question they might want to share with the teacher to add to the traveling book framework. All of that, but that experience, the story of what you just shared, Allison, I was there with you as you're walking down that street with your son. I mean, the impact of a good book and this kind of an invitation can be lifelong for all parties involved, when they can become part of the story. So, wow. Shannon, any more thoughts before we start to wrap up?
You know me, so many thoughts. Thinking about that culminating activity, or culminating, you know, the ways in which you systemize this thing that you want to do in your classroom. And, you know, my colleagues shared such great ideas. I think on the other end, so not only the tail end of that one, I don't know, circulation of that one text, but before, you want to think about, how will I kick this off? And maybe you wait for that first parent teacher conference so that you can have like an actual in-person conversation with, you know, the person, the special adult in that child's life, and you talk about it. You, like, you know, really become the commercial for the activity. You share your excitement and enthusiasm, and then you also share perhaps the cover of the book and a journal that you're going to also send with the book in a big Ziploc bag that goes to, you know, that's the thing that goes around to the homes. There's just, I mean, I think the opportunities are endless.
Oh,
and I think this just brings another thing to mind, in that we don't want to make assumptions about literacy levels and or even language, you know, language ability in terms of reading. And so that's another item to think about when you're choosing the text. Is it a picture book with lots of great illustrations and minimal text? And when we have kicked it off, have we said to the person that's going to do this at home with the child, you know, if you don't read the language, it's okay. You can look at the pictures and tell the story. The child can tell you the story. The child.
Or maybe you book, I don't mean to interrupt, or maybe you choose a book that can be translated. That is a translation.
You have the translated one already, or you have another kind of parent engagement opportunity where a parent volunteers and, you know, writes out the translation, and you kind of are able to stick it in there. I mean, there's another way that opportunities are endless, but just, I think the core value there is that we make no assumptions, and we want to remove barriers. So let's make it as accessible and as inclusive as possible to everyone and anyone that's going to participate.
Wow. That was a lot of brainstorming, ladies, but and a lot of things came up that we hadn't planned, which is what always makes us the happiest, because there was a lot of creative thinking about problem solving, and it brings us up to the fact that there's even more thinking to be done around this topic. So we can't wait for you to continue to engage with us around how literature can find a place in your classroom and in your children's homes so that family engagement can grow around this important topic of race and equity. And we'll continue brainstorming as we invite you back to another roundtable, number 7. But until that time, please, we ask you, as Shannon was saying, the invitation is so critically important and how you create the right invitation. And we're trying to create an invitation to you through these series of roundtable conversations to continue to engage with us. So as you come up with your own thinking and creative ideas around this topic, please don't hesitate to email us at ctdandece@gmail.com so that we can get your ideas and bring them into these conversations and share them. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Allison, so much for this time, as always. And I can't wait to see you back for the roundtable number 7. Until then, take care, everybody. See ya.